The couple started actively communicating via Messenger. After discussing business topics, jokes and anecdotes appeared, including erotic ones. After the woman bought a car, she hosted a big celebration and washed the car. She thanked a married friend and asked for her permission to continue communicating with her husband on automotive issues, wheels, maintenance, restoring driving skills, etc. The man's communication with the woman legally continued. The friends still interacted warmly. When an affair between the husband and the single friend began, whether it happened after 6 months or a year is unknown. After a couple of years, the friend told the wife she had found a man. Another year later, she gave birth. 3 years later, 7 years from the car purchase, the wife accidentally noticed that the child's patronymic was the same as her husband's. His name was extremely rare. The child looked exactly like her husband. She carefully examined her husband's phone and found transfers of money to the friend and erotic messages. The wife went into a hysterical fit, invited the friend over, and strongly admonished both her husband and the friend. There was a fight, and the husband's belongings were thrown out on the balcony. The friend cried and apologized, saying she didn't want to ruin someone else's family, she just really wanted a child. The husband couldn't say much except sorry, it just happened and please don't throw me out. Later, during counseling, I learned that the wife didn't want a second child, although the husband strongly requested it. The husband's interests aligned with those of the wife's friend. Additionally, the wife had retreated into esoteric courses out of boredom. The child was now an adult, becoming somewhat strange and distant, losing her femininity. At that point, the wife expelled her husband and forbade him to communicate with the child. The husband, seeking to return to his family, approached me. I advised him not to conflict with his wife over meetings with the child and not to irritate her. Also, to avoid living together with the mistress and to communicate on social media that they were not together. It's worth noting that the mistress behaved very correctly, not manipulating the man, allowing him to decide for himself. This is rare. After 3 or 4 months of complete contact loss, though the husband continued sending money, the wife bounced back and initiated a dialogue herself. She refused to have a second child, but agreed to start working with her husband at his large company. The issue of her interacting with the illegitimate child was complicated. He was already used to his father, and the father continued regular contact. After several setbacks and counseling, we managed to resolve the issue, making this contact transparent to the wife and without direct contact with the former mistress. As the wife now worked with her husband, her suspicions gradually dissipated. Interestingly, the husband was generally a very decent person, and in my view, it was a mistake for the wife not to have had a second child. Her deep immersion into esotericism led her away from her husband and into a strange state. I do not justify the husband, as deliberately planning the birth of an illegitimate child is a serious breach. It's fortunate that the marriage was preserved, but the situation itself is very specific, controversial, and could have had alternatives. Both the husband and wife, when visiting other psychologists separately, were advised that divorce was the best option, since they had only one child who was already grown. However, I couldn't ignore the husband's desire to save the marriage. Despite this, I must mention that the family later lived quite stably. An example from practice: a young man over 30 worked in management, had many social contacts. He dressed in suits, looked good, but earned little. He lived in his wife's apartment, which her parents gifted her. They had a preschool child. The wife worked. Their relationship was good but lacked brightness, like most others. A colleague at work told him he slept with a girl from their organization who loved anal sex. The man was curious to try this experience and offered to do it with his wife. She was outraged and refused. A second attempt to bring this up was made. The wife threatened, If you ask again, he'll pack my bags and kick you out of the apartment. This issue of the apartment had never before concerned him, but from that moment, he felt a sharp sense of helplessness and began engaging in financial schemes at work, which he had previously feared. About 3 years later, he managed to secretly save funds and bought a one-room apartment for his aunt. He then deliberately arranged to sleep with that same girl from work, who previously introduced anal sex to his colleague, who then moved to another city. The reputation of the girl, who had many connections, was not a problem for him. She became his mistress, and he gained access to a wide range of sexual experiences. According to the man, he simply wanted to satisfy his curiosity and his male ego. He wondered, if other men have different types of sex, why not him? The wife's strong rejection deeply hurt him, and he no longer felt like a man in the family. Despite initially not wanting to fall in love, he eventually did. After a couple of years of relationships, he was promoted and took his mistress to his new job, where she proved useful during his schemes. The girl then began asking him to leave the family. The man proposed to the wife to have a second child, but she was already nearly 40 and refused. Then the husband declared that he was hurt by their unmet sexual needs and accumulated grievances, and he decided on divorce, moving out to his other apartment without the wife's knowledge. The wife said she was willing to have a second child, but the mistress was pregnant, so the issue was moot. We worked through the custody and emotional issues of the child, who was deeply distressed by the parental divorce and the mother's nervous breakdown. I managed to reconnect the wife with life, however, during a brief meeting with her former displaced and gone husband. I realized his perspective was that Andri, my wife, rushed into aging voluntarily. I foolishly followed her, already feeling myself aging. But when I felt my masculine strength return, I suddenly wanted to live differently, with a young life. He was even willing to pay for a child with his young wife, although he hadn't actually sought that before. So, the choice was clear: preserve the marriage and grow old, or destroy the marriage and get a second chance at life. He chose to live, and he refuses to apologize for that. He believes he has the right to live freely. From this, wives should understand that after 40, choosing to remain an aunt or grandmother is a very risky life strategy, because a husband might reject her and respond with infidelity and leaving. Even at age 50 or 60, it's essential to try to prolong your youth, vitality, sexuality, and activity as much as possible. That is the right strategy for preventing infidelity after age 45.